here we are in September, Friday afternoon at the Manor, and I don't see Susan. So I will be the one who's introducing our two speakers, one after the other. And I'm a sci-fi maniac way back. I was the child who was born with a telescope in his hand. And so to have Alec Seretis as a parishioner here at Manor Road is beyond a great gift. And so Alec has been with us twice before, but he always helps us look into the stars and see another corner that we have yet to be revealed. And so now I'm going to say, without further ado, we welcome Alec Seretis to Manor Road United Church, Friday afternoon at the Manor.
I'm hopefully everybody can hear me. My name's Alec, and I've been interested in astronomy ever since I was a little guy. And my mother pointed out the 3 stars in Orion's belt. And ever since then, I've been fascinated with astronomy. And so today, I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about Mars and what might be going on in future explorations, not just of Mars, but of the solar system. So we'll start off with Mars. And I'll just go here from the beginning. Yeah. There we are. Okay, so everybody can see my screen, I believe. Okay, so that should be it right there.
We're going to attach that to you.
Right.
Put on your computer.
Okay. Anyway, Mars has been kind of an object which everybody's been interested in for quite some time, and science fiction novelists have had a field day with Mars. Mars is the planet one further away from the sun than we are. So it's the 4th planet from the sun. We have the sun, and then we have Mercury, Venus, the Earth, which is us, of course, and then we have Mars. And this is a picture of a space probe with Mars in the background. So before we actually start on Mars, let's talk a little bit about planets. How can you tell at night you're looking at a planet instead of a star? Various ways, and not all the ways are as good as other ones. But anyway, they don't appear to twinkle as much. They are closer to us, and they shine by reflected light. So their light seems to be more steady. Now, of course, twinkling really is an atmospheric, it's kind of an atmospheric condition imposed upon starlight by our atmosphere. And sometimes the atmosphere's steady, sometimes it's not. So you can't always go by this, but they seem to shine by a steadier light because they're brighter. These are quite often the first objects that you'll see after the moon when it gets dark at night. The other thing is, they tend to move against the background stars. Of course, all of the planets in our solar system are orbiting the sun as we are. And so what you'll see is planets shift their positions in front of the background stars. And the ancient Greeks, of course, noticed this a long time ago. And they actually they coined the term planets, which means wanderer in Greek. So the other thing is, you may know about Zodiac Constellations. They're the ones that you'll read about in the newspaper and horoscopes. They're the famous ones like Scorpio, Libra, Gemini, Taurus the bull, Aries the ram, all of those. And there are 12 of them. And the Zodiac Constellations are where the sun appears to be. As we go around the sun will also appear to shift position, but it only goes through certain constellations. And it's these Zodiac Constellations. So if you see an object that you might think is a planet and it's not in one of these constellations, then it's not a planet. You might be looking at something else, or maybe you're looking at an airplane. That's happened to me like once. And I think the best way that you can tell a planet from a star is if you put a telescope on the planet, you'll actually see a disk. And then if you magnify it, you'll see a bigger disk and you'll see some detail on the surface or in the clouds. If you have a star and you have a telescope on it and you magnify the image, all you'll see is a point of light. You're not going to get any closer by magnifying because stars are so much further away than planets are. So anyway, number 4 is really the best, I think. So something kind of is interesting. All the planets that are further out from us, so that's Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. And, you know, I'm even going to include Pluto. I know Neil deGrasse Tyson wouldn't agree, but anyway. They tend to show a weird motion in the sky. Remember I said that planets will move against the background stars, but at certain times, it almost looks like they're going backwards. They kind of do a little loop. And you might think, what is this? That's really strange, and it's called retrograde motion. Now, of course, planets don't go backwards in their orbits, and it's very easily explained. It used to be thought, of course, that Earth was the center of the solar system. Everything was moving around the Earth, but nothing could be further from the case. But if you accepted that Earth was the center of the solar system, you'd have to worry about this retrograde motion. Like, why would planets be doing these little loop-the-loops at different times? Of course, they're not. If you look at the bottom picture, it's an illusion. The Earth would be the inner of those two circles. Right here, the Earth would be the inner of these two circles, and Mars the outer. And it takes 365 days and a quarter for the Earth to go once around the sun. It takes Mars about 680. So it takes Mars longer, it's further out, right? So the Earth is going to be passing by Mars at different points in its orbit. And as it passes by Mars, Earth will be going faster. As it passes by Mars, it'll actually look like Mars is going backwards, as you can see right there. And then as we continue on, Mars will look like it's catching up. So that's the only reason for that. And it's totally explicable if we accept that the sun is the center of our solar system and everything goes around the sun. Jupiter does the same thing. Saturn does the same thing. Mars, you'll really see it because it's closer. Jupiter and Saturn will go retrograde a little bit, but they're further out and they don't move as much in their orbits in each year. So you won't see it as much, but Mars, it's pretty obvious. So how is Mars different from the Earth? Well, it is totally different. It's about half the size of the Earth, a little more than half the size. We have one moon. It has two, Deimos and Phobos, and actually the names for these things are very appropriate because Mars being the god of war, Deimos and Phobos is death and fear, or something close to that. Gravity, Mars has less gravity, obviously, than on the Earth. Now, Mars is much colder. The Earth has much more of an atmosphere, and it also has a bit of a greenhouse effect, hopefully not too much, but it actually will help warm our atmosphere. Mars has a very, very, very thin atmosphere. And so in the daytime, in the summer, on the equator, you'll have temperatures like maybe 30, I'm talking Fahrenheit, maybe about 20 some Fahrenheit maximum, which sounds pretty good, right? But then they'll go down to about minus 150 at night. So it doesn't retain its heat. Mars also, as I said, takes 687 days actually to go once around the sun. And the Earth takes 365. And Mars's atmosphere is composed mostly of carbon dioxide. So we couldn't breathe it. If you went out on Mars without a spacesuit, not only is the atmosphere too thin, that it's carbon dioxide, you wouldn't be able to breathe it. One huge problem with Mars that we don't have is Mars doesn't have any protection from ultraviolet rays coming down to the surface. So radiation will come down to the surface, and anybody who's on Mars will be absorbing this radiation. Of course, on Earth, we don't have that problem because of our ozone layer blocking out most of this harmful radiation. Mars looks like this in a telescope. You'll see polar caps, actually, and some desert areas. Mars is like a cold, dry desert. Orangish areas and some darker areas. And it used to be thought that these darker areas could be vegetation of some sort. But we now know that's not true. They're most likely exposed rocky plains. So here's some images. I want to show you some images from Mars. This was taken from one of the landers. And this is what Mars looks like, actually, kind of at sunset. I've seen more sunset being kind of a violet picture rather than kind of a yellowish sunset like this. But you also see over on the left-hand side, there seems to be what looks like a dust storm, and Mars actually does have severe dust storms, and we'll take a look at this in a few other slides. So this is Mars, the surface of Mars. You see it, it's pretty desolate, and you'll see a lot of rocks. This is taken actually from orbit, from one of the orbiters that have been sent to Mars, and this is called Valles Marineris. What that is, it's like a rift valley that's much larger than the Grand Canyon. So they do things pretty big on Mars. Valles Marineris is many times the size of the Grand Canyon, actually. This is a picture of what you'd see on Mars in the daytime. You see some hills, some low mountains, some hills in the background. You'll see a lot of rocks. And this is probably Curiosity rover. And that's a smaller rover that actually was brought to the surface. And the big one actually stayed put. This one mainly, and this one actually went on little roving missions. And so that's a very small one. We'll take a look at some of the Mars missions a bit later. These rocks seem to be kind of volcanic rocks. So Mars has had like volcanic activity in the past, for sure. And you'll notice that Mars, there's kind of a salmon pink orange sky and in the daytime. And you'll notice that Mars has kind of an ochre color. And that's mainly due to iron oxide compounds in the soil. It's almost like rust in a way. Now, taken from orbit, we at first thought maybe Mars had vegetation. And this is kind of interesting. When we first saw pictures of Mars taken by the earliest Mars orbiters, we were a bit disappointed because we saw craters. So we thought, if it's going to be kind of like the moon, what chance is there of life? However, Mars is a different thing altogether. Now, I want to ask you, when you look at this, what does it remind you of? Remember, this is taken from orbit. So what does that kind of remind you of? See if you can think of something that on Earth it would be similar to.
Rivers.
Sorry?
Rivers?
Rivers, yes. In fact, we do think that Mars was warmer and wetter in the past, and there was free-flowing water. And so that ups our if we're thinking maybe we might find some life or some evidence that there was life in the past, that actually has been improved since we found these river what look like river tributaries, and they are. There are a lot of them actually on Mars. But there's no free-flowing water right now that lasts any period of time on Mars. This is really neat. Olympus Mons is Latin for Mount Olympus. But you know what? This is a big volcano, and you can kind of see a crater, the caldera at the top. It's huge. This thing is about 10 miles high. And so it's higher than Mount Everest. This thing is a huge, huge volcano, and this is seen from orbit. We don't have any evidence that it's active anymore, but some people have said when they've observed Mars that they see little clouds around the caldera, and could that be gases that are coming out? I don't know. So Olympus Mons. Now, here's something. The best time to observe Mars is near what we call opposition. And last, I think, a year ago, September or October, about a year ago, we had a really good opposition of Mars, where Mars actually came relatively close to us in its orbit. And opposition is just where a planet comes as close as possible to the orbit of the Earth in its own orbit. So this was actually taken back in 2001. There was, as I said, a good one in 2020 in October. And here's a picture of what Mars on the left, what Mars generally would look like, but sometimes you get what happens on the right. And on the right, there's a dust storm, but the dust storm covers the whole planet. And so the chance of seeing anything interesting on Mars, if there's a huge dust storm, it really decreases your chances of seeing anything. And unfortunately, the last time there was a Mars opposition, we had a huge dust storm. So we wanted to take some good pictures, and then it did clear after a while, but we actually had this dust storm happen. Now, there have been many missions sent to Mars. A lot were orbiters, and there were some landers, a few landers. But you know what? A lot of the missions didn't work out. A lot of the missions failed. Mars has a very bad record of missions which were actually successful. So this is a slide. Now, I'm not sure if I can zoom in at all on this picture. Whoops, maybe I can't. Oh, well.
There is a way. You go to the top, the zoom ratio feature.
Oh, there is? Okay.
I think it depends on which. Yeah, I think it's says me. Okay. I think that does it.
Oh, yes, that does it. Okay, good. Perfect. There we go. Okay. You'll see that it's kind of hard to read even so. But in this picture, you'll see, for example, both destroyed during launch, destroyed during launch, failed in Earth orbit. Other ones actually crashed onto Mars. There was a lot of failures of Mars missions, unfortunately. But we do actually have, and I'm going to concentrate on a few missions that actually did end up on the surface and were successful. Now, in the early part of the 19th century, this is a gentleman named Percival Lowell, and he has an observatory. He worked out of Flagstaff, Arizona. And this is the Lowell Observatory right here. I've actually been there. And he looked at Mars, and back then we didn't have a very good way of taking pictures of observations. But so what astronomers did, they made drawings. And here's a drawing right here that was actually done, this middle one. Here's Percival Lowell at his telescope. And here's a drawing that was done. And you'll notice that in the drawing, you have these straight lines going between some of the dark areas that he drew. So he saw these straight lines and he thought they might be irrigation canals built by some intelligent species to help irrigate this desert planet. And so after these drawings of Mars were done, people started thinking, there could be life on Mars, some sort of life. And this was done in the early 1900s. And there have been a lot of science fiction authors who wrote books about Mars. And one of the most famous ones is War of the Worlds. And actually, it started out as a radio broadcast. H.G. Wells wrote the book, but Orson Welles actually narrated this as a radio broadcast. And he scared a lot of people because he did it almost like he was a reporter, reporting on real events. So people heard this radio broadcast and were thinking that, oh my gosh, we're under attack by Martians. And he had to go back on the radio and explain that it was just a story. But anyway, this is the most recent incarnation of the movie War of the Worlds. It was done, it came out in 2004 starring Tom Cruise. And I'm going to show you a clip. Hopefully everybody can hear this. I'm going to show you a little clip of the first time that the aliens appear in this movie. So here it goes.
There's nothing outstanding.
You wonder why they're still hanging around? Anyway, I think you get the idea. How do we stop that? I'm just going to go on to the next slide. Okay. Good. Anyway, so we now know that there wouldn't be aliens like that plotting against the Earth. Chances are, if we find anything on Mars, it would be a microorganism of sorts. But what would be interesting is if we found some sort of fossil evidence that there had been life in the past. Because of seeing the river beds, and also some of the landers were able to determine that rocks on Mars, certain rocks must have been formed underwater. So we really do think Mars had a warmer and wetter past billion or a few billion years ago. So anyway, some Mars landing missions had actually worked out. Here are some right here. And in this picture, this is the north pole of Mars. This is like if you took Mars and just stripped off the outside and laid it flat. So Viking 1 and Viking 2, back in the mid-70s. We also have Opportunity, Curiosity, Spirit, Insight, and we have the Phoenix lander that actually landed near the poles. And then the newest one is Perseverance, which actually landed here. So the Vikings 1 and 2, this happened in the mid-70s. This is Carl Sagan, my favorite scientist. Actually, he had to do with the development, and he acted as a consultant for this, the first Viking missions. And so here he is standing beside a mock-up of Viking 1 and 2 were identical. Viking 1 landed near the equator, Viking 2 landed near the pole, and they took the first pictures that we saw of Mars, sampled the soil, and they did also some biological tests for life forms. However, what they found was inconclusive. They didn't say no and they didn't say yes. They said, well, what we found could have been produced by living organisms. However, possibly some weird interaction between ultraviolet rays and the soil might actually produce those results too. Here's Pathfinder and Sojourner. They cataloged weather data. They took a lot of pictures, and there's that little cart actually, which did most of the roving. This did a little bit. Spirit and Opportunity. This was even larger. They actually looked at some rocks and determined that they must have been formed under an ocean of sorts. And the Phoenix lander, you didn't hear as much about this, but it landed near the pole to study the permafrost. The polar caps are mainly made of carbon dioxide, but there is a water vapor component too. In fact, we think there's a lot of water locked up as permafrost on Mars under the soil, but it's constantly frozen. And Curiosity, the most recent lander, It's actually searching more for evidence that Mars could have supported life in the past. And so it's digging into the soil and has more experiments to maybe determine if there would have been life in the past. So it's very exciting to me. I'm very interested in that aspect. Here's InSight. It actually studied the interior of Mars and also Mars quakes. And just getting back to Perseverance, Perseverance actually had a little helicopter. There's a little helicopter on Mars now called Ingenuity, and they took it for a few test flights. So this is the first time we've actually had a little helicopter mechanism on Mars. Mars's atmosphere is very, very thin. However, obviously they've had to balance the weight of this thing and how big the vanes are on the helicopter so it actually will fly. So they did some test flights already. And the other thing that this craft is doing, it's storing some soil and rock samples, and it's planned that future missions will retrieve them and bring them back to the Earth. So Perseverance will stay on Mars, but these rocks will get back to Mars. I don't know whether they're thinking of a mission with humans or whether they're thinking of another robotic mission. Now, it's kind of interesting how this one landed. First of all, they have to figure out a good place to land. And so the orbiter would take photos, compare it to maps, change course a little bit. And it had a remote lander, which actually carried the craft that was going to be on the surface, the one which had wheels. And it actually fired retro rockets, so it hovered. And so this craft was lowered onto the surface fairly gently. And I have a landing sequence. This is a landing sequence, so you can actually watch a little animation here on how Perseverance landed on Mars. This is really neat too. Of course, this is all animation. It actually landed on February 2021 this year, but it would have lifted off 6 months earlier. It takes about 6 months to get to Mars. So there's the lander. That's actually with the heat shield. And it's coming in through the atmosphere. Otherwise, it would burn up if it didn't have a heat shield. Much thinner atmosphere, though. Okay, they've ejected cover, the heat shield. Now that's going to hover and lower the actual wheeled mechanism down to the surface. So that just goes off and crashes somewhere. And there we are. It's incredible that all this is done remotely. Okay, so it just brings us to a question. I just want to say something about Mars's atmosphere. We said it was really thin, but there are winds on Mars, quite strong winds, and they can whip up the dust into these huge dust storms. Now, here's the thing. If anybody has seen the movie The Martian, I don't want to everything wasn't exactly true in that movie to science. However, it was a really good movie, and a lot was it was a good thought experiment. However, when that one, I forget who it was, Matt Damon, I believe, that actor, he when he got marooned on Mars, he actually was outside, and a dust storm came along and just blew through everything and blew him off his feet, and they actually thought he was lost, and so started coming back. But then they realized like later on that he wasn't lost. He actually woke up. He was knocked unconscious, and then he had to fend for himself for a long period of time. In any case, the wind on Mars, one would take issue with that, because yes, there's huge winds on Mars, but it wouldn't knock you off your feet, because Mars's atmosphere is so thin that the wind on Mars, you'd feel it a little bit, but you wouldn't be knocked way away by this wind. So anyway, that being said, why explore Mars? Why do you think? Why are we interested in exploring Mars? What are some reasons? Now you could unmute your mics if you'd like to comment on that. So why, I'm going to give it to you. Why would we explore Mars?
Maybe get the screen view up so you can see the faces.
No, I see him here. But I'm going to get back to that too, though. Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. Touch it. Okay. Good.
There we are. Okay, so why explore Mars? Any ideas? Well, for one thing, we are thinking of possibly, and there's been a lot of talk of putting a colony on Mars, starting up a colony so people can actually live there for a longer period of time. And that would be an interesting thing. Mars is a whole new world. We really have to start looking elsewhere and moving out into space, moving out from the Earth if we're going to survive. Because I know it's a long time, but in another 4.5 billion years, the sun is going to do things so that the Earth will not be habitable anymore. And it's going to turn to what we call a red giant star, and it's going to be boil the oceans away, scorch the Earth's surface, and really life as we know it wouldn't survive that. So by that time, 4.5 billion more years, we have to be elsewhere. So we really have to start looking for places where we could go. Well, perhaps Mars would become more temperate if that happened. But still, there are a bunch of problems that we have to go through in even creating a colony on Mars. And one of the biggest problems really, besides growing your own food under domes, maybe ensuring that water is purified, all that stuff, it's radiation. And that was a problem also in getting people to Mars, because radiation would also affect you in the 6 months it would take to get to Mars. So they'd have to figure out a good shield for radiation. And some people have talked about maybe living underground on Mars, because if you live underground, perhaps the radiation wouldn't get to you. However, perhaps we could figure out a way that you could make the domes that you would live under, so radiation wouldn't go through them. So obviously it's a huge problem. So why explore Mars? We really have to get off the Earth eventually. And the other thing is, we want to, it's just so amazing to explore another planet and maybe see if there was ever life there, because that's a question that would be great if we could answer, if we were once we find even microbial life that has originated elsewhere, we're really, it would be really mind-blowing. Now, I just wanted to show you this. You'll notice it has my name. This is my boarding pass. And actually, NASA had a little program where millions, anybody who would want their name on Mars could actually get their name on some chips that were put into the Perseverance rover. And so my nephew did that for me as a Christmas present one year. And so my name is up on Mars on this rover right now, along with maybe 10 million other people, but that's okay. It's just so cool. And I have the t-shirt too. I don't know if you can see this. My name is on Mars. So anyway, and NASA does have, it's another way to raise money, no doubt, but it's another way that it's just a cool thing that they've done. So there's my boarding pass, departure July 2020. So just to end up, and I have about 5 minutes, it looks like, just to end up, what's next? So the title of this was supposed to be, it was going to be Mars and Beyond, possibly. So here's a few things that are coming up. The James Webb Space Telescope. It's going to be a big improvement upon the Hubble, and we'll be able to look back to hopefully the first galaxies formed in the early universe. Incredible power to this thing. Artemis 1. It's an uncrewed preparation for the return to the moon. Actually, NASA is thinking for turning people to the moon in around 2024. And that's the date they give now anyway. OSIRIS-REx, it was a mission that actually went to an asteroid called Bennu, and it's going to return to the Earth in 2023 with some samples taken from this asteroid. And what we can actually learn from that is our asteroids are very, very old, formed at the same time the solar system was formed. And so we learn more about the formation of the solar system by analyzing this material. We also have the Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer. It's the European Space Agency in 2022 is planning to, I think that's when it's going to launch, but anyway, it's going to fly by. There's 4 Galilean moons of Jupiter. Jupiter has about 78 moons or something like that. The Galilean moons, they're the biggest moons of Jupiter discovered by Galileo, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. And so it's going to be a flyby of Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. These are ice-covered moons. And we think that there are oceans under the ice. So we wonder what's in the oceans. And Europa especially has been known and thought of. We should probably go to Europa and check it out. ExoMars rover and orbiter. I believe it's a European Space Agency, Russia collaboration. And it's going to look at atmospheric components, methane in the atmosphere. And methane is an indicator possibly of life, but it could be some other things. But if there's a lot of methane, we are thinking possibly it has a biological source. So anyway, Europa Clipper, this is the one that'll be really interesting. Going to Europa, possibly digging through the ice and sampling the ocean. And we're wondering what we're going to find. In 2025, I think it's going to launch, at least they plan to. The Psyche mission, there's a metallic asteroid named Psyche between Mars and Jupiter. That's in the asteroid belt, and it's going to go there. Apparently, this asteroid has a higher metal content than other asteroids. Asteroids do have metallic contents. And the last is Plato, European Space Agency. It's named for planetary transits and oscillations of stars. Now, why that's important, that's how we know that there may be planets around other stars. And what we look for is a dip in the light curve. If you look at the light of a star, It could get a little bit dimmer and then not so dim periodically. We think it's because planets are going around it. And also oscillations of the closer stars. There might be a little bit of a wobble in some of these stars because the planets are pulling on the star a little bit. So this is going to be a craft which monitors this sort of thing, and hopefully we'll be able to find more planets around other stars. We think that most stars have solar systems. And if you extrapolate that, that really gives you a good chance of finding life somewhere, because life needs a substrate to start off on. And what I'm talking about are planets. So there are more planets than even stars in the universe. And in the universe, we figure that there are as many stars as there are grains of sand on every beach on the earth. And that's incredible. So anyway, that's it. And I'm so glad to have everybody here and listening. And hopefully we'll be able to do more of these things live. So I'm going to open it up now. We don't have much time left, maybe a minute or so. Would anybody have any questions? Anyway, so I want to thank you again for your attention, and that's it about Mars and what might happen in the future. I'm very excited. Thanks again.
Okay.
Here you are.
Okay. Thank you, Alex.
You're welcome. Thank
Well,
you.
one day we'll be able to get to Mars. Wouldn't that be phenomenal? Okay. And
I'm already trying to find Mars.
now welcome to our part 2 of Friday Afternoon at the Manor, as we welcome Shelley, a wonderful harpist who I met through my lovely friend, Shauna. And Shelley has been playing the harp for many years and brings her harp to our These Labyrinth event, but uses harp as a way to heal and discover. Okay.
Welcome. This is Rosalind. She's a beautiful red Kamek harp. And she's one of my many girls. It does become a bit of an addiction. So we'll talk about all the girls that I have. So you may say, how did you begin this journey, Shell? Well, as a little girl, most people who are musical or play instruments come from a very musical family. My family is tone deaf, completely. And except for my grandma, who was from Ireland. And mom and dad, knowing that they were tone deaf, made sure that all the children had a chance to play music, to hear music, to be involved with it. And I played the piano, which there's a harp inside. And grandma would often come over every Sunday night for lamb. And she'd say, oh, Shelley, wouldn't it be grand to play the harp? And when your grandma says something, you listen. So that seed was planted a long time ago as a little girl. and with my cultural background. Now, I got busy. I got busy becoming a teacher, then becoming a mom, then trying to get a bunch of degrees done at night while being a mom. And all of a sudden I finished. And Peter said to me, how do you want to celebrate, Shelley? Do you want a party? And I said, oh, no, Peter, I want a harp. At that point, he fell on the floor and he was like, why have you not said this before? So that began the most interesting journey of our life. Before I go into the journey, I'm going to switch books and play one of my faves. So then began my journey of where to find a harp and where to find a harp maker. Being Irish, I wanted a Celtic version, and the Celtic versions are a little bit different, more later. Searched around and ended up on a website that brought me to two very special places. One was with Mary Anderson Buchanan. Now, I never saw Mary Anderson when I first met her. I actually met her harp before her. And I picked up a brochure, took it home, and then phoned her and said, look, I'm really interested in purchasing a harp. May I come and see what you have? And she said, of course, come on up. So up I went to around Fergus. And I just was so mesmerized by walking into this room full of women in a circle and men as well, in a harp circle playing, and I fell in love completely. Didn't notice, though, that Mary Anderson Buchanan, recording artist, had one hand. Yeah. The other hand, her left hand, was artificial. And she was able, with the harp that she had, to use fake fingernails on her hand and chord throughout the recordings in her music. Stunning. Well, I fell in love with the particular harp that she was selling. It was made by John Dorman, who was a creator of prosthesis, actually, artificial arms and legs and such. But he did harp making on the side, and he was able to create spacing in the bass that could accommodate the fake hand of Mary Anderson Buchanan. So I ordered. It took 9 long months for the harp to be made and to arrive. Now, when I start to talk about the harps, I'll tell about the wood and how I could choose every part of the harp that I wanted. So the day came. I was ready to go get my harp. My daughter was maybe 3. So I bundled them all up in the car, put them in the car, drove back up to get my harp. I forgot to talk about the artificial arm. So in we go, and there was Miriam, my very first harp, waiting for me. And I needed to touch her and hold her, and I kind of forgot about my kids. Bad mom, I know. And Mary said, wait, no, there's something wrong with this harp. I need to go in and fix one of the holes with the pegs. It's not turning right. She picked up the harp. You can pick them up by the pillar. And she started to walk away with it to take it to her husband's repair shop. At that point, she got frustrated because her artificial arm was too heavy and cumbersome. So she whipped it off, threw it on the bed, and kept going with the harp. Well, you can imagine my poor 3-year-old. I don't think at 27 she's feeling any much better after all this. Going, Mom, where's her hand? So that is how I was able to come across my very first harp named Marion. At that point, I now had my harp, but what I needed was a harp teacher. So again, went on the internet, and I found this couple on the internet. So again, I load my kids in the car with my husband, and we drive off to Oakville. I have no idea if these people are axe murderers or who they are, but I'm going to go talk harps and teachers with them. Gail and Dave Brown became sure and fast friends. We walked into their home, a good, beautiful Christian home, with 2 children of their own who had a love of music and a love of God. The men, being woodworkers, my husband Peter and Dave, talked about making harps. David had made Gail's first harp for their wedding. Gail and I just talked about music and raising children. And that began a 25-year friendship that is completely cherished. So before I move on, I'm going to put Rosalind Merlot, I'm going to put her to the side. And I'm going to introduce you to Faith. Whoops. This is Faith. And with Faith, I had the faith to buy her. Faith, are you ready? Don't worry, I'm going to tell you about what I'm doing later. It's actually quite magical. That particular song is called Caterpillars on the Dill. So you'll say to me, okay, now we found out where you got your harp, but where does the origin of the harp begin? Oh, you might think, how can such a magical, angelic instrument start with a weapon, a bow? Yeah, this is actually where the origin of the harp began. So you can imagine the hunters out in the evening, and at night, what are they doing? They're sitting by the fire. What else are they doing? Telling story, singing songs, making music. And the history started just with one string. This you can't hear as well. And yes, this is mine. This is called an act of love. I'm doing it for my husband. I'm learning this. And what they were able to do is shorten the wavelength of the string, make a higher pitch, and leave it long to make a lower pitch. People who are ingenious, and what they decided was maybe we needed more than one string. Maybe we need to add 5. Maybe we need to add 10. Let's see how many different tones or sounds can we create. So out of this one string came harps of 40 strings and 48 strings. Now there's a lot more that went on into the history of the harp. I just can't talk about it here right now. And it evolved with the different cultures. It did evolve a lot in my particular heritage in the Celtic area. And one of the things, if I can share, may I share, please, JJ?
Yeah.
One of the beautiful,
We'll get you to share 1 second. Okay, here we go.
no problem. One of the beautiful shares. Uh-oh.
Here, you're 1 sec. You're almost there. Okay, co-host here. Good.
No problem.
Can you share now?
I shall share now.
Good. Okay.
Because in Ireland, where the harp, if you're able to see it, became one of the national instrument, and even is on their money, and it's even on their incredible beer, Guinness. So this is one of the original harps from Ireland. And again, the Celtic heritage and the Scottish heritage really took off with creating music using this particular instrument. There was a particular gentleman, and as they went on, they had very small harps without all of these mechanisms, and his name was O'Carolan. Now, O'Carolan was blind, and what he was able to use the harp for was playing for his dinner. And as he would go about, he would play to the women of the home and create songs in honor of their food. So a Carolan traveled far and wide with his instrument. And this one particular song is to Annie Laurie. Oh, sorry, my friends. I had to tune because this one was not very happy. over the years, the actual structures of the harps have remained somewhat consistent, yet their mechanisms have evolved and continue to evolve. So let me introduce you to my girls. These are only some of my girls right now. First is my sweet little one. This is Rosalind Merlot. And I'll tell you how they get their voices and their names, because it's really up to the harpist. This is Faith, because it took a real leap of faith for my husband to get this one. And this beautiful woman is Sheila. Sheila in Gaelic means heavenly music. And she is actually named after my mom, who helped me purchase this harp. Now, there is quite a difference between the harps. You can get harps as small as 10 strings, and they're very small, and they sound, because their music is all up here, just like a little music box. This is one of the larger Celtic or lever harp that you can get, and it has 40 strings. This is actually a preparatory harp to get ready for a pedal harp. This particular harp is a lever or a Celtic harp, and it has 32 strings. So you can get a 22 string that is a lap harp and sits close to your heart, 26, 29, 32, 36. Then we get into the 40 strings, and here we have 47 strings. So when you look at a harp, I'm going to use Rosalind to show the anatomy of a harp. You can see the soundboard. This particular soundboard is made of spruce. Actually, all my harps have spruce soundboards, and that's because of the texture of the wood itself that allows the vibrations to occur. You pluck the string, you need the soundboard to vibrate to create the sound and the music. And then at the back, you can see the sound chamber, and also where all the harps are tied together. In the original harp, you'll notice that they weren't able to really change the tone and pitch on their strings unless they tightened it by applying pressure or wrapping it around a peg. On these particular lever harps or Celtic harps, you can see that we have the strings, we have pegs for tying our strings to, we have a tuner that goes on the other side that helps me to tighten or loosen the tension of the string. These are what we have seen an evolution in the harp from the old Celtic times. This is called a lever. And what the lever does is it takes your string, which is in a tone, it adds pressure by I pull it up, and as I pull it up, it pushes on the string and it raises the tension a semitone. So here's C and C sharp. And that's how I am able to play with sharps. But Shell, you need flats as well, right? Mm-hmm. So what do you do as a Celtic harpist when you want to do some chromatic music? Music with accidentals or changing key signatures. What I do, so this is all the levers are taken off the string. I've pushed them down. And that's called, they're in their open strings. There's no pressure on them. Then I take my E, my A, and my B on all my octaves, and I put them up. So that raises the string a semitone. And then what I do is I tune it in C major. If I want a flat, I can just push down to get rid of that increase in the semitone. So from B natural to B flat. So that's a lever harp. A lever harp is amazing and has a very different technique than the orchestra pedal harp. When I look at the harp itself and the actual strings that go into the soundboard, you're not able to see this as well as if I was there. But the strings actually have different colors. You can see the dark strings. So this string is a little bit darker and it's a C, and the dark blue ones are Fs. C are red, blues are Fs. C's are red, blues are Fs. And if I look on the lever, they have those colors as well. And you'll say, but why, Shell? Well, basically, when you play the harp, you're playing with your peripheral vision. And the color coding helps you to be able to locate your hands in space and to land on the string. This particular harp, Rosalie, has wound metal for the lower strings. They're beautiful. Wound nylon for the upper strings. Now, when I went to purchase my first harp, Miriam, I had the choice to select the wood and the varnish, the soundboard, the decoration, and the type of strings. So for Miriam, I wanted a rich, mellow sound, and I chose walnut. Walnut and cherry woods create mellow sounds within your instrument. Maple is a little harder, and it creates a brighter sound in the instrument itself. This particular instrument is made of carbon fiber, except for the spruce soundboard. You can get a harp that is completely made of carbon fiber, and you can throw it in a swimming pool. But I like the richness of the spruce soundboard. This one I purchased when I retired, and this is my therapeutic harp. Being carbon fiber, it only weighs 15 pounds, which has really helped me when I sneak into a patient or a client's room, or I'm playing at the bedside. So Rosalind will come back. She is a Camic harp, and she was made in France. The next harp is Faith. Faith has a harder tension in her strings. Rosalind, beautiful soft tension. I can just make my fingers go like that. This one, I really have to pull or thwack, as we say, in a different manner. I have to really use my hand to get the sound out. Now, when I play, I don't pick. I use the fleshy part of my finger, and I actually keep it straight with a titch of a curve, keep my thumb up, and bring my finger right into my palm to drag it, the flesh across, to get a deeper, more beautiful sound. This harp has 40 strings. It's a little more ornate than a Celtic harp. A Celtic we would think of more like folk music. This particular harp, Faith, can be both folkish and more classical if you wish, but you notice that she still has the levers. She is made of mahogany with a beautiful spruce soundboard, and with her, I went for decorations as well. This one I take out more for funerals, teas, weddings, and such to play. Her pillar is very ornate and strong. The harp itself, this side is where the tuning pegs, where we start to tune. And it takes me on the larger harps 20 minutes to a half an hour to tune. I have a tuner, mechanical tuner that tells me when I'm on, and I put the tuner on this side on one of the pegs, and I can use my tuning key. I put it on the peg and I can twist this way to make it go up in sound or twist it this way to lower it. Faith, she has the same as Rosalind. She has the red strings for seeing peripherally. She has 40 strings. She definitely has the wound brass down below. The wound nylon, not nylon, but the wound gut, and more gut strings up here. What that does is it allows for a deeper and richer sound with the string itself. So that's Faith. I'll play her in a titch. I'm just going to take my bow away. Now this last one, we never thought this would happen, so it's quite a miracle that Mom made sure, Mom who couldn't sing, who loved music, was able to help me purchase a pedal harp. You'll notice that the mechanisms are very, very different. There are no levers. You'll notice that there are deeper, much deeper strings, like the bass of the piano. Definitely wound brass, thicker gut, and more gut up here. This particular harp has the pillar, the arch, the soundboard, the sound chamber. And let's see if I can actually look down to the ground. You'll be able to see the pedals. So instead of changing my semitones with levers, I use my feet to create the pressure on the strings. There are 7 pedals: D, C, B, E, F, G, and A. Now this is when I wish I had a better camera for you, but that is upstairs. When I look at this, again, you'll still see the coloration of the strings. We have C is red and the Fs are blues. No levers, but what we call discs. And they're 2 little pins that turn on the string. Right now, everything is in flat. And if you were closer, you will be able to see that I'm going to press all my Cs and all the discs will change at once. And the discs will put pressure on the string to take it from C flat, C natural, and I'm going to push down my pedal to C sharp. So within the pedals, I'm up here in the flat, I push my pedal to the middle, I'm natural, and I press it down 1 more notch, and I become C sharp. Shira doesn't like changes in the fall or spring. And as soon as that happens and we open the windows, I start to lose strings. I'll lose about 6 strings with the change in temperature. So yes, I have to have a humidifier on to take care of these gut strings. Now last night Sheila decided that she wanted to break a string on me. So what I like to play for you, oh, I don't know which one, I love them all. I'll play this one. This is called Who Will Sing for the Nightingale? This is what I played for when my mom and dad passed. as they pass the torch of we will. The children will sing. One thing that's really interesting, everyone thinks that we hold these harps on our shoulder, and actually it's our knees that squeeze together to keep the harp up and close to your body. It actually vibrates against yourself, and it's a very soothing instrument for the player as well. Is it comfortable? No, I get a really wicked pain in my shoulder blade. So what I'm doing is I'm taking with the pedals and I am pushing them down to neutral so that we are just completely in C. Now I am going to put an F sharp on. So these dark strings are going to be pressed with the discs to raise this a semitone. It's being able to see the music I find now at this age. So Rosalind weighs 15 to 18 pounds. Faith, 50. I can manage that. Sheila, 100. Awkward. So Sheila has gone into the forest several times to play weddings. Do you know there are dandelion legs that crawl over your feet when you're in the forest playing weddings? So my husband and my son were lifting for me. I call them my roadies. They were lifting Sheila from the car along the paved pathway at the Courtright Center to the forest. But that path ended, and there was a gravel path, but that path ended. And then there was a sandy path. at which point the men had to lift her from her cart and carry her through the forest. And they said, hey there, we quit. And that's actually how we ended up with Faith. Faith I can lift and take care of myself. The particularly interesting thing about the strings of these harps is that a full set of these strings costs anywhere from $400 to $600. So when I lose them in the spring and summer, or spring and fall, I always go, ouch, that hurt. So I've been able to play at a variety of weddings. It's been really wonderful to be the stem of a rose and just to support a loving couple. But I have to tell you, there are some very interesting things that happen at weddings, like waiting for 3 hours for the bride to show up when it's 40 degrees in the church. Or the cowboy wedding. Yeah, I played a cowboy as my son was there and he goes, Celtic Harp and cowboys? I think not, Mom. That one I waited for an extra hour as the poor bride forgot her flowers. And I played and I played and I played. There were lots of interesting times. I've always been very honored to support people on their special day. It's just very magical to bathe the situation in music. And the harp is magical because there's a lot of emotions during a wedding or a funeral or a gathering. And what you want to do is create a blanket of sound. And this definitely helps calm people down. If you play it after dinner at a party, it kills the party. They all fall asleep. But I thought, you know what? There's got to be more than doing weddings and funerals and teas. As much as I love that, what else can I use this for? Why did God give this to me? Because this truly is a gift from God. Our dear friend, Gail, that I met forever ago, was involved with a particular organization called Music for Healing and Transitioning, where they were able to use their instrument as a therapeutic form of support for people in long-term care, hospital care, delivery rooms, for loneliness. So my journey changed. And I would listen to her and think, yeah, you know, Gail, that's really lovely, but I don't think I'm up for that. Well, then my mom got Alzheimer's. And she was in the lockdown ward. Not fun. If you want to see a love story, I'll tell you about my dad and mom one day. The True Notebook. So every day I would go in and I would say, God before me, God beside me, God behind me, God just surround me. I don't know what's going to happen this day. So I went in one December day and I was pushing Mom around and getting ready for lunch so I could feed her. And I was pushing her in a wheelchair. And we got to the door of the lunchroom and it was locked and they were late. And you don't do that on a very routine floor. There were many types of people, a lot in wheelchairs, but a lot of wanderers who were nonverbal. And they were wandering and getting more anxious and you could feel the energy increasing. And there I was with Mom by myself because the poor nursing staff and PSWs were taking care of changing and everybody. And the angst was building. Being a primary teacher, what is the first thing I think to do? Sing. Silent night, holy night. At that point, the residents who were nonverbal started to sing in 4-part harmony with complete words. So much so that it stunned the staff and they came running to find out who led in the choir. At that point, I was convinced and went back and talked to Gail. So with music I'm not a music therapist, I'm a therapeutic musician. Music therapists go to university for 4 years and they do become therapists with that deep psychosocial emotional component that I do not have. And they are able to use music in a deeper manner. What I do as a therapeutic musician is I trained for 2 years, and I can go into a particular situation and read the feelings and the mood of that situation and match music to play to create a field of healing, even if it's in a cancer ward. It's not healing to cure, but healing to give peace. So I studied with Music for Healing and Transitioning, and then it's an American organization. I wanted something in Canada, and I discovered Room 217 because Gail took me to a conference, and there was Room 217, a Canadian association. Now, with healing and transition, I learned a lot about how music impacts not only the body and the parasympathetic nervous system, but also neurologically, how it goes into the brain, and why music can draw out memories and speech. It goes into all the components of your brain. And with music, that's what helps to pull it out. If you can ever watch the documentary Alive Inside, which deals with using music to bring people out of that Alzheimer's fog, it is amazing. What I learned through the particular course was how to use beat, melody, and timbre with entrainment to support people in care. Beat, very simple. There's your beat. So what? Well, what do I want to do with that beat? If I'm in a nursing home and I have someone who's sundowning, which means they're agitated and they're walking and they can't settle, how am I going to use the beat? How am I going to entrain with them, match them, and bring them to a place of calm? I start at where their bodies are. They might be walking fast, so I'm going to get a jig and I'm going to match them. And then slowly, reduce the beat. And that, my beat, starts to impact their parasympathetic nervous system and helps to reduce the agitation within their body. I know, it sounds like, whoo, but it isn't. This has been well proven by science. In the mornings, I would match a slower beat to wake people up to get them ready to get dressed. I would move from a beautiful, soft, gentle sound into a faster beat. This is the way we put on our shoes, put on our shoes, put on our shoes. This is the way we go to breakfast early in the morning. So when you train as a therapeutic musician, you start to learn how to use music to impact what's going on in the world of a person. It's not only just beat, it's also melody, and melody is where the memories are. Someone described it as pearls on a necklace to create a beautiful scene, music scene for a person to listen to. And the melody of your 20s and 30s is so embedded in your brains that when you start to become about 80 years old, that is still in there. So when I go to play for someone in their 80s, I look back to music of when they were in their 20s, and I use that music to start to play to them to bring them out of that Alzheimer's fog and start to create dialogue. That's usually because within our homes, within our long-term cares, there's a lot of loneliness and isolation. And music is for one of the foundations for building relationship. The greatest thing about the harp when I use it therapeutically is the timbre, the actual sound of it. You can't go wrong with this beautiful soft sound. The softness of this particular instrument lends to meditations, calming, and preparing for evening, vespers, or good night. If I was to use a trumpet, it's a very brass, which it is, instrument that is very lively that I might want to be using for entertainment. So when I go into a situation, I want to determine what type of music I'm going to play, the beat of the music, fast, slow, and the timbre, loud, soft. I also want to look at the complexity of the music. If I'm dealing with someone who is in the later stages of Alzheimer's, even this would be too much sound. And I would use one note at a time. And it's just enough to enter into the brain in a gentle fashion without upsetting. So I've been able to journey along using music, not only in my teaching, but using music for care. And I'm just going to flip to room 217. Let me share this website with you. This particular journey, Music for Healing and Transition, I used my acoustic instrument. I used the harp at the bedside. With room 217, not only can I continue to use my harp, but what I was able to do is learn how to use recorded music to create playlists to address the needs of residents. And this has been spectacular in that I've been able to work alongside nurses, administrators, caregivers, cleaners in long-term care, and to say, this is how you use music in your scope of practice and what you do to help create relationship with your residents and how to help them overcome if there's an emotional issue or information transference. So you notice that I sing a lot. And just by using a continued old pattern, this is the way we go to school. And I can use that melody, which most of us know from childhood, to give information to a resident, especially in dementia ward. This is the way we go to lunch. This is the way we lift our spoon. So room 217 has an amazing program for volunteers and professionals of how to use music in your scope of practice, whatever you're doing, or if you are a caregiver for a loved one who is experiencing illness, dementia, loneliness. Quite an incredible Canadian product who has become global as well. So that has been one of my walks, is learning how to take music and what I do and to bathe people in the comfort of it. We also use music for transitioning people from life to death, or as I like to say, from life to a glorious life. And that music is very different. That is walking on sacred ground. With that music, I look at the T-zone on the person, their eyes, their face. Are their eyes clenched in pain? Is their face relaxed or is it tight? What is their breath? I take a moment and I entrain. I feel what they're doing. And then I put it into my heart. At that point, the brain wants simple. And I match when they breathe out. And I wait. Are they going to breathe in? And then I'll play more tonal music when they breathe out. At this point, it is not for the family. It is for their client. And when they've made their transition, then I play a song for the family. going to take my B pedal and put it up to make it B flat. Check all my pedals that are in place. Center myself. Breathe for the family. Play Falling into Heaven. To be honest with you, this is truly a God-given instrument. And I praise God for what He has allowed to come into my life. The experiences, the friends, the sacred ground of walking and transitioning with people. My heart is steadfast, O God, my heart is steadfast. I will sing, yes, I will sing praises. Awake my glory. Awake harp. Awake lyre. I will awaken the dawn. Thank you for letting me share one of my greatest loves and one of the greatest gifts God has given me. You're on mute.
Thank you, Shelley. Now I'll repeat that one more time. That was truly remarkable and a blessing. And I was wondering, you're having about 15 harps in your house. You must have quite a remarkable place to have all that music.
No, it's very teeny.
Okay.
It's very teeny and everybody trips over them. Dinner is being made right there. And the dogs, the many dogs, are usually at my feet with the vibrations.
Oh, wow. But I'll sign off for this part for now and say thank you, Shelley, but don't go anywhere. And it's been an honor. And next week, we actually have Chef Mia, who's going to make what to cook for Thanksgiving. That's next week.